between my legs and wrapping me up. And that blood, it was cold. I remember it touching my legs. It was really cold. And they said, well, I said, what is that? Well, it's the blood. You're going to need all of it. And I knew I was in trouble. They got me into the emergency room, and the doctor in the emergency room, he says to me, he says, well, your family is here. You have 10 minutes to think about the last thing you'll say. And it was that blunt. They said, do you want to see your family together or one at a time? So I said, one at a time. I'm going to try to BS my son a little bit. He's 17 years old. But I'm going to tell my wife, I said, I ain't going to make it. So I had just that. I had 10 minutes to think about what am I gonna, what do you say? So I said what I had to say, and I had to, they take me off and start assessing me, and they're putting stuff in my neck, tying it in my artery so they can shoot me up again if my heart does stop. Absolutely. The next thing I know, they've got me into a room in ICU, and a doctor came into my room, and he said, I said, well, how's it look? And he said, it doesn't look good. He said, I'm willing to work on your arm and put your arm back together. He said, but the rest of your body is so beaten, I can't do anything with it. I'm not qualified for that. We're gonna try to find somebody else that'll do it. And now that's kind of a bad feeling when your doctor doesn't even want to work on you. So they found a doctor named Michael Swords, and he came up the following day. They did surgery on my arm. They put plates in my arm. The X-rays showed that I'd broken both of my hands, both of my wrists. I'd shattered my humerus, I'd broken all of my ribs, and I'd shattered my pelvis. And I had a lot of internal damage. So Dr. Swords comes into my room the day after my arm surgery, and I said, well, you drew the short straw. And he said, well, in a sense. He said, I've done surgery on pelvises before. And he said that currently there were only about 5 physicians in the state of Michigan that will operate on a pelvis. And he said, if I get to do surgery on your pelvis, he said, this will be the worst surgery I've ever seen and ever performed in my life. And I said, well, what do you mean if? And he said, well, you don't live through this. Oh. Well, I just had surgery yesterday. Why can't I have surgery again? Well, your body is taking such a beating that if we put you under, you won't wake back up. You'll go that way. And I thought, well, if I'm going to go, maybe that's not such a bad way. I said, well, what do I need to do to get into that surgery room? And he said, you need to live for 5 days. I said, well, and now it's just me and him in this room. My wife and my mom and dad have gone down to the cafeteria, and I asked him, just be blunt with me. I appreciate it if you just tell me how it is. Just be blunt with me. And he said, he said, you don't live through this. He said, I don't think you can live another 5 days. So 5 days laying in that bed, concentrating on my heartbeat and my breathing. They've got me jacked up on so much morphine. It didn't stop the pain. That pain is the most excruciating pain, and I know what pain is, but that tops it. I could never in my life fathom feeling like that. And even with all that morphine, it never went away. I just didn't care about it. So the 5th day came and went. Dr. Swords comes up to my room, and he said, well, today's your day. I said, all right, let's go. And he says, it's going to be about 8 hours. Well, it doesn't make a lot of difference to me. I'm going to be sleeping anyway. But, so he says, I thought I was out of the woods. And he assured me that I wasn't. He said, I've got some other teams in there standing by. If you crash, then I have to get out of the way. They have to take over, and whatever is left of you, that's what you get. Well, I don't have a whole lot of choice. Come to find out, the things that they do to you during that surgery, they cut me from hip to hip, and they took my guts out so they can get into your pelvis. And they took, literally take drills, and they drill holes in you, and they run self-tapping screws into your bones, and they'll form a stainless steel band in there to hold your bones together. Once they got the front done, they sewed me back up, and they cut me from about mid-leg to the top of my butt and across the top of my butt, and they took all that off so they could get to all the damage in there. I had a total of 8 breaks in my pelvis. Both sides of my sacrum were broke. My pubis bone in the front was broken off. One of the loops on the bottom of your pelvis that you sit on was broken off. And the socket was gone. It was completely gone. And they told me that there's a very strong possibility you won't walk again. There's just too much damage. You won't have that muscle. Your nerves are going to be damaged so bad that you probably won't have that control anymore. To me, it was one day at a time from there. You get me through this, get me through surgery, get me into another hospital room, get me out of ICU, and then we'll do something else. We'll start working on that. Finally, I got into room 690 in the West Wing of Sparrow Hospital. I'm laying in that bed, and my leg keeps wanting to flop upside that bed, and I can't pick it up. I can't move it. Oh, man, well, there's nothing I can do. Lay here and wait. So I spent a total of 4 weeks at Sparrow Hospital. They came to me and said, Chad, there's nothing more we can do for you here. We gotta, we can't do the right therapy for you. We can't handle you here. We have to move you to someplace else. So they moved me to Charlotte, which I liked because it was closer to home. So I was in a rehab center in Charlotte. They took very good care of me. They didn't know what to do with me. They got me and they said, this guy can only put weight on his left elbow. Everything else is broke. So they're looking at each other. What are we going to do with somebody that he can't get out of bed? I'm cast it all up. I'm sewn up. I'm stitched up. I'm stapled. They didn't know what to do with me. But once they kind of got used to working with me, and they were afraid of me at first because they didn't want to hurt me. Once they got through that, things started progressing pretty good. I spent another 4 weeks there. So I was gone from my home for 8 weeks. I was in a wheelchair for 12 weeks. September 19th was the day that I finally got to stand on my own 2 feet again. And that was, I was ready. I wanted to do it in the doctor's office, and he, no, you're not doing that in here. Because he said, we don't know if you're going to hold together, if you're going to come apart. We won't know until you stand up and you try it. He said, well, what's the difference if I do it here, do it somewhere else? He didn't want it in his office. So they sent me back to rehab, and I could not wait to get on the parallel bars, to be able to stand up and start walking. And I stood up, and my legs, they felt like jello. It kind of felt like a little deer standing up for the first time, shaking. And then it's like it took a second And I could just feel everything just starting, my nerves and stuff starting to react again. So it took me, I think, probably another 3 weeks to learn how to walk again. Which was, it's a scary thing. At the time of this accident, backing up a little bit, I spent 5 days a week in the gym. I was 190 pounds, I had a 29-inch waist, I had a 50-inch chest. I was bench pressing 365 pounds. I was leg pressing 1,070 pounds. And that's a 190-pound guy. I was 5% body fat, which is what saved my life. But to go from being in such incredible shape, the best shape of my life, to not even thinking you're gonna, in a matter of hours, you're not gonna live because of this girl with this dang cell phone. And what right does somebody have to put you in that position? And everything you would think would be okay. We're 2 years later now. That's 2012. 2 years later, 2 years ago I thought I'd be okay by now, and it's not okay. I'll never be the same. I'll never be in that shape that I was in. Mentally and emotionally is probably actually harder than it was physically. That's where I had to learn that you have to be stronger in your mind than anything. Because it will tear you apart. It tears your family up. That's a lot of guilt. I realized that I had no part in this. The driver of the car, she said I had no part in this. I had absolutely no choice what had happened to me. She took full responsibility. It took her a while. But I would imagine that she didn't feel so hot either. The girl that called 911, I knew her dad very well. We grew up together. She had to go through counseling and stuff like that. She witnessed the whole thing. That messed her up. The driver of the car is messed up mentally. And she's going on with her life, and I guess she's doing pretty well now. But it's all because of that. All because of being distracted, not paying attention to what you're doing with that car. I was very lucky. I was lucky that I got through all of that. I wasn't wearing a helmet. I had a severe concussion, but for the most part, anything I lost as far as my brain waves and that, it pretty well came back. I don't hear as well, I don't speak as well, I don't see as well. I don't remember things like I used to, but it could have been so much worse. I don't encourage anybody to ride a motorcycle without a helmet. It's not all that smart. I mean, you put yourself into a pretty dangerous predicament anyway. This world is not the way it used to be when I was a kid. And when I was 17 years old, I'd ridden from Michigan to Maine, and from Maine down to southern Nevada on a motorcycle, and I never had an issue. I'm 4 miles from my house, and a 100-pound 17-year-old girl dang near killed me. Your whole family, your whole household, all your friends, everything is disrupted by that. And it doesn't seem to get much better, because this lives with you, and you dream about it, and you hear it, and you see it over and over. And I'm waiting for the day for that to go away, but for 2 years later, and it's still here, I don't think that day's going to come for me. I think this is what I'm stuck with. It's not something I asked for. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't drugging, I wasn't speeding, I wasn't screwing around. I was going home with my brand new motorcycle, one of the best days of my life that I can remember. I never felt better, and I will never feel that way again. Every morning is a struggle. Every night is a struggle. And it can happen to you just like it happened to me. No different. Today is no different for anybody else. You got up, you got dressed, and you came in here. You're not planning when you leave here that somebody's going to hit you. But you don't know that they're not. I didn't know that they weren't. I didn't even think about it. I think about it every day now. I think about it could happen to anybody in here. I don't want to see that happen anymore. I'm tired of it. I drive now and I see it all over the place. It's like a magnet to me now. It's like amplified. You see all these wrecks. Well, yeah, you're on the cell phone. What did you think was going to happen? This is a big learning experience, and most of it's bad. I've met a lot of great people along the way. And I feel like that if we can get out and we talk to people, and we can drive this home, and people understand that this isn't just something that, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Well, it wasn't going to happen to me either, but it did. It can very well happen to you. There's more cell phones out than every day they're selling. And people get them and they don't pay attention. They're more interested in their cell phone than they are in their car. And that's the problem. They're coming up with new technology all the time now. I just heard today they're putting Wi-Fi in vehicles now. Isn't that exactly what we need? More distractions? And it affects so many people. What if it was you? Think about, in the back of your mind, think about, what if on my way home today, I'm walking across the intersection, somebody is texting and driving and smacks me with their car and runs over me? What would happen in your life? What would you do? Who's going to take care of you? I couldn't get in and out of bed on my own. Special stuff had to be done to my house so I could stay at my house. And I was lucky. I was lucky to come through it the way I did. I don't feel sorry for myself. I feel bad for the girl that caused the wreck. I think about her. I don't hate her. I don't want this to happen to her. I don't want her to know what this feels like. I don't want you to know what this feels like. Okay, I did it. I felt it. I know what it feels like. That's good enough for all of us. Take my word for it. You don't want it. I don't want it. I'm done with it. I've had enough of it, but I can't do anything about it. This is it. And as I get older, it'll get worse. That's what I get to look forward to. It was a big learning experience. I learned so much about insurance, especially motorcycle insurance. I mean, I didn't know how any of that stuff operated. That's why I thought, geez, oh, Pete, I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose everything. How am I going to work? You're telling me I'm not, if I'm lucky, I can stand up in 12 weeks. How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to take care of my family? It is not, you know, it affects your insurance policies. You got people sitting around these offices looking at the bill on my hospital bill. I assure you it's high. I can't imagine, I don't know what the total bill is, but I know the first month at Sparrow Hospital, I hit $1 million. And that probably doesn't include, that probably didn't include all of my medicines either. That was my surgeries, my time in the ER, my rooms, maybe my food. When I left there and went home, because it was an auto accident, the insurance company made it possible to revamp my home so I could go back to my house. That's where you heal the best, is in your own home. They set up I had to have a case manager help me with all my appointments. Now, how am I going to get to my appointments? Well, now I have to have a driver, and that driver has to know how to handle me and where I have to go and get me there safe. There's so many things to think about. You're not going to cook your own food. You're not going to get out of bed on your own. You're not going to get back in bed when you're hurting. You're not going to get your own medicine. You're not going to take care of yourself.